Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Bill Monning. He's a member of the California State Senate, a new member. You had been in the Assembly for 4 years. You're now in the Senate. Talk to us about how it is, the differences, the similarities.
Right. Well, it's been a good transition.
Sure.
I'm honored to have the opportunity. I'd say the biggest difference is I represent a much larger district geographically. 4 counties, over 6,000 square miles, bigger than the state of Connecticut.
And what's remarkable, some people may not realize, state Senate districts in California are larger than U.S. congressional districts in California.
That's correct.
And so you have a beautiful coastline, but from top of district to bottom is how many hours?
It's about 4 hours by car from San
Wow.
Jose to the Santa Barbara County line, pretty much everything in between along the coast. It's a beautiful district.
Right.
We do represent about 950,000 residents versus a congressional seat, which is about 750,000.
So how do you service the needs of residents in such a large area when you think about some of these urban districts that are compact into 25 square miles or whatever it is?
That's right. So it is a challenge. We have district offices in Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Luis Obispo counties, but limited staffing. I spend my time when we're in session 4 days a week in Sacramento, and then I devote my Fridays and Saturdays to doing district work, and we divide those Fridays and Saturdays among the 4 counties, try to protect Sunday for some family
which
time.
is okay.
Right.
What about the differences between a body of 80 and a body of 40?
Well, that's a good question. It is, I'd say, more deliberative, a little more civilized or respectful.
Okay.
Most everyone in the Senate has served in the Assembly.
Right.
Not everyone, but the vast majority. We tend to be a little bit older and hopefully a little bit wiser.
Right, a little grayer.
But there's really a nice camaraderie. People read headlines of partisan gridlock, but there's a lot of collegiality.
But what's interesting is the Senate Democrats and the Assembly Democrats have a 2/3 majority mostly. I mean, there's some special elections. And so there are, I think, 11 GOP members, and that makes 29 Dem members.
Yes.
I mean, do you talk to your GOP friends? You don't need them for much.
Right. But, I think it's important for people to realize that 2/3 majority we do have now in both houses, it's not a monolithic block.
Of course.
And we have a spectrum within our Democratic members from liberal to very conservative. And so things aren't maybe as predictable as people might think they are from a distance.
Well, let's talk about predictability. There was a bill that was bipartisan, passed last year out of both houses. It dealt with ski safety and reporting and transparency about the ski industry. The governor vetoed that bill, even though there was bipartisan support. You have brought it back.
I've brought a version of it back.
Please.
And what this is, it's Senate Bill 564, and it quite simply is a consumer protection, consumer safety piece of legislation. It would require ski resorts to file an annual safety plan and how they mitigate certain hazards that are on ski slopes of bad trails, avalanches, ski equipment, etc.
There have been some high-profile losses on ski slopes. Sonny Bono, Natasha Richardson, one of the Kennedy scions passed away. And so we know that skiing can be dangerous. At the same time, we know that Californians love skiing.
That's right. So it's one of the most lucrative outdoor activities in the state of California. We have about 26 ski resorts. Interestingly, amusement parks like Disneyland have to file these safety plans that we're requiring by this legislation. Ski resorts don't.
When we come back, let's talk more about the legislation.
Okay.
For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, Senator, why is it that the amusement parks are required to provide reports that are transparent to the public, but yet these ski resorts don't have to?
Well, it's an inconsistency, and we're trying to plug that inconsistency. And we did find some good support last year, I understand, when a colleague of mine, Republican, now Senator Ted Gaines, carried the legislation. There was some good bipartisan engagement and engagement of some of the resort owners. We're simply saying you should develop a safety plan that's available to the public and maintain a registry of injuries, serious injuries, and deaths. You just cited some of the high-profile deaths that we know have happened, but neither you nor I can go anywhere today and find out how many deaths have happened at different ski resorts.
Really?
And how could those have been mitigated. One of the sponsors of my legislation is a Dr. Gregory, whose daughter died tragically at a California ski resort from massive head trauma. I believe she was 26 years old, Jessica. And he, as a physician, has sought to promote this type of protection for consumers on the theory that his daughter might not have died had there been better posting on those slopes, better information available as to where it is safe and where it's not safe.
Here's the challenge. This governor, a Democrat, has been very clear that he wants to rein in overburdensome regulation. When he signed legislation dealing with some CEQA reforms relating to Farmers Field in Los Angeles County, he said in his inimitable way, there are too many damn regulations.
Right.
And we know that when we're compared to Texas, for example, that we are not looked at favorably in the business community, because there's a sense that while our taxing structure may not be as egregious as some would say, the regulatory structure can be overburdensome. So how do you balance that? You have this Democratic governor who doesn't want to overregulate, but you do want to keep consumers safe and have knowledge at their fingertips.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head. We have to be cautious about the mantra of overregulation in forsaking what I think is a government responsibility to make sure that consumers and taxpayers are protected and have access to information to protect themselves, particularly parents protecting children. What we're asking through this legislation has minimal costs. Many of the ski resorts say they already develop these safety plans and protocols. They're just not sharing them. So we're saying if you're already doing it, why not just make it available? Doesn't that help potentially limit the injuries or deaths at your resorts?
Talk me through it. So if this legislation passes and is signed, there will be some postings. How does that then translate into increased safety? I mean, the argument would go, it's like the Prop 65 signs that we see. This building has dangerous chemicals. Well, what am I supposed to do with that?
Well, it's a fair question, and I think even in the development of a safety plan, you create a higher level of protection, because part of that safety plan would require steps taken to mitigate how you post or block an unsafe trail so that somebody doesn't unwittingly go on a trail that's considered not safe, a recent avalanche, something like that. So just raising the intention of the resorts to develop this plan will result in potentially life-saving measures that nobody will ever see.
What do the resorts say? Are they involved? Are you working with them?
We will be. In the past, they were very involved in the dialogue on the legislation. I have engaged at an early stage and expressed my interest in working with them. We've just submitted this bill for some amendments to try to narrow it and make it more user-friendly for everybody.
Do you know what's done in Colorado or Utah, other big ski states?
It's a fair question. So some other states do already have this reporting requirement in place. And federal lands, including some of the resorts in California that use federal land, they are required to file this identical report with the federal government, but it's not necessarily available to the public. So again, we're just saying transparency, consumer right to know. When you buy that lift ticket, you basically waive liability. You read the back of the lift ticket, you're holding the resort harmless. So we're not trying to create a higher level of liability here. We're trying to create a higher level of safety.
You mentioned the federal government. Should this be a federal issue, though? I mean,
well, I think it could be, but the need is now, and we're in a position in California where this is one of the biggest states and one of the states with the highest number of resorts. I would fully support a federal reform on this, but I don't want to wait for the federal government, especially given the current gridlock.
I hear
back
you.
there.
His name is Bill Monning, member of the California State Senate. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Bruce Gibson. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. We'll be speaking about Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
Based on reports from the National Ski Areas Association, on average, how many injuries occur at California ski resorts per year? On average, about 30,000 skiers are injured at ski resorts in California per year.
Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are now joined by Bruce Gibson. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County, also a seismologist, not a geologist.
Because the geologists won't have
They
me
will
in
not
their
have you.
fraternity.
We
True.
know in our state there are 2 nuclear power plants. One in your county, San Luis Diablo. One in North San Diego County, San Onofre.
Right.
That plant is down.
It's shut down now. They had some replacement work done, and defective steam generator parts have caused both reactors to be taken offline.
And it's remarkable because it's causing a whole chain of financial woes. We have ratepayers that are still paying Edison the fees as if San Onofre were up. And then we have a PUC hearing on that issue.
Right, and we have the NRC looking into, under what conditions they might be able to start up again. And it's not at all clear that that's any time soon.
So it begs the question, a couple of questions actually. Does Diablo pick up the slack for San Onofre?
Well, the whole grid, the whole electric grid statewide responds. And I know that there are a number of power plants in Southern California that will be seeing more duty to provide the electricity, especially as we go into now a second summer season. So.
And fortunately, last summer wasn't as bad as some fear with San Onofre offline. Begs a second question. San Onofre, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but there is a chance that it will be shut down permanently.
That's one of the possible
It is,
futures.
if not one of the reactors.
Right.
And so this county, San Luis County, has recently commissioned a study to look at what happens when Diablo is decommissioned.
Whether that's, as sooner or later, we know that a nuclear plant has a finite lifespan. Now, Diablo is approaching a time to apply for a relicense that would give it another 20 years out into the 2040s at some point. But at some point, this county is going to be without that particular power plant.
And let's talk about the importance of that plant to this county. Because for those that don't live on the Central Coast, if you drive through here, if you're a tourist, I don't think you have a real sense of how pivotal Diablo is.
Exactly. I mean, you don't see it's a very interesting contrast to San Onofre. You drive right by on the I-5.
The 2 big
Diablo
reactors.
You don't see from the highway, but it produces when it's up and fully running. At one point, it was about 10% of all of California's electricity. It provides a huge chunk of property taxes.
And that's the key. And that's what I want to expand on, because there is no question that this county, a local school district called San Luis Coastal, is incredibly reliant.
There's some total of in the $23 million range, last I remember hearing, that is the total property tax contribution of that plant to this county. Some goes to the county itself, more goes to the school district, in particular San Luis Coastal. And complicated formula of how that's, how the value is assessed and the property tax levied, but there's no doubt about it that our school districts in particular would be in very deep.
And at the same time, I believe Diablo is the largest employer in the county, or is it Cal Poly?
Well, Diablo would be likely the largest private enterprise employer. Now, they also have some very well-paying jobs there. A lot of head of household jobs there from a wide variety of skills, trades, crafts. So, the county felt that it was really important for us to understand the consequences.
So let's do this. Let's talk more about it when we come back.
Sounds good.
For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, Supervisor, I do want to get a bigger and better sense of what the county is doing now to anticipate the future, especially with what's going on in San Diego.
Well, we want to get some basic information in front of us. I think that's the first stage. And we don't have a purely defined plan of how we move forward, but we obviously need to understand the property tax contributions and the contributions to our economy from the some 1,200 or so jobs that are there. Now, once we get that information, we will know the economic consequences. We also have a number of costs implied, I think would be fair to say, from storage of spent fuel there, different risks that the county takes on for having a nuclear power plant, as you indicated, a well-operated power plant. We're in the midst of the seismic hazard reevaluation that we took on since
And we need to speak about that.
We will, yeah, a very important piece of information. But I think once we get the basic information, I think our board will reconvene on this and decide what do we want to do. And you know, I think it's probably worth looking at some scenarios as to what it would take to replace the economic impact of that power plant.
It's interesting, you look at its location and it's downright majestic.
Yeah. It's a stunning piece of
Stunning
coastline.
piece of property. And you know, maybe we don't want to turn that piece of property into the beaches of Honolulu, but hey,
Well,
I mean, it is off the beaten path, and you know, could you create this kind of tourist mecca?
It's adjacent to a state park.
Right.
I think you know, there are a lot of people whose vision would be to incorporate that into the state park. We are working through the Wild Cherry Canyon acquisition
Sure,
that I
of
know
course,
you've talked
yes,
about to
with
try to
Lake Slate.
expand that state park. So there's that would be certainly an obvious place. But you know, the county's also undertaken an economic strategy, and we have clusters of economic activity in the county that we hope to see grow. Now, how does that fit in with what we have in Diablo Canyon? I think we just don't know exactly those interactions
But
at this
the
point.
challenge becomes, if that property is not developed, likely it becomes hiking trails, cattle grazing, surfing, which we love on the Central Coast. We love in California.
Right.
But the property tax implications of that would be dramatic.
Exactly. You know, you're not going to see an economic engine
No.
out of the tourism that's so important to this county. You know, make no mistake that the natural beauty of this county is a primary driver of tourism, along with our wine industry.
Right.
But yeah, you're not gonna see $23 million of tax revenue generated off of
Have
hiking trails.
tourism options been considered? I know it's early in the process.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. The short answer is no. I think it's pretty clear that massive development of that coastline is not part of the plan.
Why not?
Hey, well, you've got a nuclear power plant there, whether it's running or not.
Right. So it's so far off. Obviously.
That plant's going to be there. We also have the spent fuel problem, or you know, we have dry casks.
But are they subject to removal?
Well,
I know that's been a
once-
big issue.
yeah, once the federal government comes up with a long-term plan,
'Cause Yucca Mountain,
not happening
in Nevada, right.
soon, if at all. So we have spent fuel stored there, and we don't know what's going to happen about that. So there's no, you know, there's no massive change to the use in that part of the coastline that I can envision in anything resembling the near
We
future.
mentioned seismic studies, and I do want to expand on that. If we were speaking a year ago, it looked as if PG&E was going to engage in some serious studies off the coast using, let's just say,
high energy, compressed air sources.
Exactly.
Looking for deep structure. Now,
Right.
PG&E, that was part of a wider study program that they are undertaking using less intense sources that get a very precise picture of the near surface, and that's important.
But the Coastal Commission denied that
Denied
request.
the high energy work.
Exactly.
So where we are right now is reviewing studies that are underway, lower energy work that's been done offshore, and seismic reflection surveys that have been done onshore.
Are you concerned that there won't be these high energy studies given what happened in Japan?
I think we have to wait until we've reviewed all the data sets before we know exactly whether or if a high energy study is necessary to tell us something that we don't know. And so I understand how the Coastal Commission analyzed it. I think that our job right now is to do a very careful job with these other data sets, decide what we know and what we don't know about seismic risk, and then if we have to come back with a high energy study,
see.
it's got to be very tightly focused and well documented.
His name is Bruce Gibson. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. When we come back, we'll speak with one of his colleagues, Debbie Arnold. We'll be speaking about prison realignment. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
Prior to San Onofre's shutdown, What percentage of California electricity came from nuclear energy? Before San Onofre went offline, California garnered 16% of its electricity needs from nuclear power.
Charter California edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. She is back. Her name is Debbie Arnold. She's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. And you are but one of many counties that are struggling to get used to the new prison system in our state. We now see lower level offenders serving their time in county jails, not state prisons. How is San Luis Obispo managing as an example of a medium-sized county in our state?
Right, Brad. Very well, I think.
Oh, good.
And as always, San Luis Obispo County, you know, the folks we have working here are just dedicated
Right.
and really on the job.
Nimble.
Right. We have, there are a lot of exciting expansions, and the plans are in the pipeline now to expand the women's jail.
And let's talk about that. I think
Yeah.
it's critical. These plans were in the pipeline before realignment came down.
That's correct.
And what's so interesting about that expansion is its timing couldn't be better, because as you know, women who are incarcerated tend to be convicted of lower level offenses. That's just sociological. And so you need the space for women because they're not going to be serving time in the state. They're going to be coming to the county.
That's right. And this project, it has been planned for a
Right.
long time. But now that it's starting to get closer to the construction stages, one part of the project will be to upgrade the security system in the entire jail system.
And let's talk about that, ma'am, if we may, because the project had been slated for a certain level of funding. That was 5 years ago. Inflation kicks in, you're putting in the new security system, that kicks in, and so it's a little more expensive than you thought it would be. So the board, of which you are a member, trying to figure out, well, should we move forward? Can we do this right now? And the board's sense in the final analysis was?
Well, they're right now very supportive of the project. The project will go to bid with a little bit of flexibility.
Right.
And I think a lot of projects now are finding you just don't know how the bids will come in.
Right.
So that's kind of the big unknown. And once the bids are out and it's
Right.
nailed down what the cost will be.
And at the same time, and separate and apart from realignment, you're looking at expanding your juvenile hall.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a development that's critical as well.
That's right. And the juvenile hall and the juvenile facilities are not part of the realignment
Right.
AB 109. But again, this project has been on the wish list for San Luis Obispo County for a very long time. And the facilities, the upgrades will be wonderful and provide a lot of services that we couldn't provide before to our youth offenders.
Now, where are you getting the money for both of these projects?
The state right now, and because of the realignment, there's a lot of money that's being made available to the counties, because the counties are being asked to pick up a lot of responsibilities that weren't their responsibilities
Right.
before. So there have been some opportunities, and that our county's been able to take advantage of.
At the same time, you may know many counties, especially in the Central Valley, I'm not sure if San Luis Obispo falls into this group, but are upset about the funding formulas for realignment. They feel as if that the urban counties are getting more money than the more rural counties. Is San Luis Obispo feeling that pinch?
Well, I think San Luis Obispo is moving ahead just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard from any of
Right.
our folks that they're having problems with this. It's an adjustment and it's new, but I believe what I'm hearing is that the funding's coming along.
It's going to work.
It's going to
Okay,
work.
when we come back, I want to talk more about realignment. Her name is Debbie Arnold, member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So Supervisor, as we continue, I really want to push you because it's very interesting to me that in some counties, when you mention the word realignment, literally the smoke comes out of the ears. But it seems like in San Luis, we're not getting that. Look, does every county love this new system? Probably not. But why is it San Luis seems to be managing better than others?
I would have to credit the
Right.
staff, and in talking, part of the realignment will be a lot more of a burden placed on our probation, and that.
Right.
And Chief Sally is doing a great job. Seems very upbeat, happy to have some of the facilities upgraded, and just ready to tackle the
And what's
responsibility.
interesting when we talk about these facilities, so women's jail expanded, juvenile hall expanded, and it begs the question, is it time that we start building new jails? I mean, we have the Supreme Court order hanging over our head saying decrease our prison population. We haven't built jails for a long time. You know, some say that's better, we should spend money on education, maybe we should. But are we getting to a point with population trends? You know, should the counties look at building more jails? Should the state look at building more jails?
And that's a great question, because I believe, what are they saying, that even with realignment, we're coming down to what, 137% of capacity in our state
That's
prisons?
exactly right.
So it's
That's-
not like we're emptying them
Right.
out. We still have, some would say, overcrowding in our state prisons, even with the shift. And it'll be an interesting experiment. You know,
Right.
will crime rates go up in the counties and the local
Right.
entities, or not?
We'll have to see. The
Remains
jury
to
is
be
still
seen.
out,
That's
metaphorically
right.
speaking.
That's right.
I want to speak with you about tourism, if I may.
Absolutely.
The Central Coast is so reliant, in the best sense,
Yes.
on tourism.
Yes.
I mean, San Luis Obispo named the happiest city in North America, and people flock to San Luis Obispo County. They come to Paso for the wines. They come to Pismo for the beaches. They come to bike ride.
Absolutely. There's been a little issue. I think you're referring to, yes.
Supervisor Arnold?
Yeah.
What's that little issue?
The SLOCOG board's been discussing
Which
this.
is
and
County of
Board
Government, the Council of
Supervisors.
Governments,
Right.
right.
And so one of the very scenic bike routes is our Highway 1 north of Cambria, for the 25 miles north of Cambria
To
along
Hearst
the
Castle?
beach and beyond.
Beyond.
So 25 miles. And that
Stunning.
it's beautiful, and a very popular bike riding area for different biking events, etc., as well as the locals that enjoy that ride. And Caltrans just resurfaced the asphalt, and it's about preserving our
Need to do that?
Absolutely, the infrastructure, but it created a little situation that makes it more difficult for the bicycles to be able to ride on the side of the road where you have loose aggregate and aggregate that's
Supervisor Arnold.
too big.
How did that happen?
So it was just it just happened.
Right.
And so now
Into Monterey County? Or
not
up? No.
quite.
Shucks, we could have blamed them.
But so we're working to correct it, and
How does that happen? How does something like that happen?
Well-
and again, I'm not trying to point fingers, but you know, it's kind of, it plays into the narrative that government's inefficient and we can't get it right, and you know.
And it's interesting because back and forth on the discussion, their priority, their
Right.
responsibility was to maintain the asphalt, and the state has been having a difficult time funding
Right.
the
Infrastructure
the
improvements.
infrastructure and trying to decide what the best way. Now in this case, let me recall, the difference was, I mean, it was quite a bit. The difference in the size of the aggregate
Sure.
was a savings for that stretch, $250,000 down to $84,000, something like that. So it was quite a cost savings.
But in the scheme of things.
In the scheme of things, and I think it was an unintended consequence.
Right, and-
I think it's safe to say.
And it will probably cost more than that savings to fix it.
Well, and it's about timing. And so what Caltrans is doing right now is trying to decide the best and most efficient way to fix the problem. Meanwhile, our beautiful spring weather's here.
Right.
Bicycle clubs and car clubs. Because if you've ever driven on a road that's just been chip sealed and the loose
Yes.
aggregate, hitting your car, hitting your
So
windshield,
what about the Amgen race?
it will not affect that. It's
That's
not the
critical.
route. Correct.
So is this an issue that Caltrans must resolve? Does the
Caltrans
county?
is working to resolve it. It's a state highway.
And so
It was a state
How did this surface? How did it?
The bicyclists, and it was the local bicyclists that realized first the mistake or the problem
Right.
while they were riding the route, saying we
Well,
can't, we can't ride our bikes here anymore.
But to play into the narrative, at least government's being responsive.
They're being responsive,
So
but the
we can
problem
say
is-
that.
It's a problem, and how quickly it can be repaired or redone, and the time right now, it seems to be just the need to decide the best way and the most efficient way to fix it. But it's about time
Okay.
as our season progresses.
Her
yeah.
name is Debbie Arnold, member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis County. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you for watching Charter California Edition.